Well, once again, welcome everybody to the SSIS Coffee Talk. Today we're going to be talking about grids and general reports. Once again, my name is Eric and I'm an SSIS trainer here with the state of Minnesota and with the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy. A couple of housekeeping details before we jump in today. If you have a question, there is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. If you hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen, you'll see that Q&A menu and you can ask your questions as we move throughout this presentation. We do like to answer a lot of the questions after the presentation is over, but we may be able to answer them during the presentation as well. So we'll play that by ear. We have a great lineup for you today. We're going to talk a little bit about the SSIS server farm project, and then we're going to jump into the presentation presented to you by Marcia Riss, who is a child welfare subject matter expert. One quick announcement, the SSIS ICWA Coffee Talk that was scheduled for April 19th at 9 a.m. has been postponed until further notice, and we apologize for that inconvenience, but in its place, we are going to host the webinar Bridging the Gap, and that will be hosted by our child welfare subject matter experts as well as our fiscal subject matter experts. So that, once again, that is on April 19th at 9 a.m. There's no need to disenroll if you've already registered for that webinar. The title has been changed and it should show accordingly. Like I said, if you have already signed up for the April 19th webinar. All right, before we jump in, I'd like to have all of our panelists introduce themselves. Once again, my name is Eric, and I'm going to pass the mic over to Marcia.
I'm Marcia Riss. I am one of the new subject matter experts with the Child Welfare Safety and Permanency team in SSIS BizOps. I am new as of December. I came from St. Louis County, where I worked for the last 16 years. And did SSIS coordination there for the last 8. Erica, do you want to go next?
I can. I'm Erica Jepson. I am the other child welfare subject matter expert, also here since December. Prior to coming here, I was at Becker County for 8 years doing various positions in child welfare. Molly, you want to go next?
Good morning, I'm Molly Kaler. I am one of the SSIS fiscal SMEs in the BizOps department, and I will pass it along to Melissa.
Good morning, I'm Melissa Meger with the SSIS BizOps. I am also a fiscal SME in the unit. Thanks for having me today. Cynthia, would you like to go next?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Cynthia Chypolsky, and I'm the supervisor of the SSIS Business Operations Unit at Child Safety and Permanency at DHS. And I want to say a special thank you to a few folks that have joined us this morning. We have Kent Smith, who is one of our Minute partners, Elizabeth Fritz, and Janelle, who I think many of you know already, so a familiar face. These 3-minute partners have joined us to give us a little bit of information about one of the projects that is moving from a pilot project to statewide implementation, and that is the Horizon Server Farm project. So if that's all right, folks, we could jump into that. Janelle, should I pass the baton to you?
Sounds good. Good morning, everybody. I'm Janelle Moran, and I'm happy to be back in this area. This is awesome. I'm working in the Minute at DHS currently at the SSIS Tier 2 Help Desk, helping out Dave as our lead, and therefore working with the pilot project, or actually it's not a pilot project anymore. It is now moving to the full-fledged official project. So this is the first coffee talk I've been to, so I believe that there was a document shared with you. I will go ahead and share that document as well. So I'm just going to cover the information that is in this document as soon as I find my share screen button again. There we go. All right. Is everybody seeing the document? All
Yep.
right.
Looks good.
Perfect. All right. So what we are doing, we are going to be transitioning from the Horizon farm that you're currently working on over to a new Horizon environment. This environment has been used by some agencies already for about 6 months. And now it's time to move forward with the project and bring everyone on, all of the agencies that are using SSIS. And why is this happening? And hopefully, not hopefully, it has proven to show better performance and stability of SSIS. It does not have all of the fixes, but it does have the speed and better performance than the legacy farm that we're moving from. And our goal is to have all users move to the new farm by June 30th. We are planning to start this out as early as next week, Monday, and again, complete the migration by June 30th. So this is a quick moving project. All agencies, again, will be moving to the new environments, and we would like to migrate 5 to 8 agencies by the end of March, and then followed by another group of 3 to 5 by April 8th. And then moving forward, we're going to be increasing the number of agencies as each week goes on. So this will be, like I said, a fast moving project, and we're going to be working with a lot of agencies for a lot of times. So it'll be interesting, or it'll be fun. The new Horizon environment, there's going to be a couple things that you'll have to do on your end. You will need to upgrade to the local Horizon client on each of your desktops to version 5.5.3. And this is the most time-consuming part of the task. And this does need to be completed before your agency can migrate. And it does not have to be, you don't have to wait to start this project or wait to start the migration to 5.5.3 and until you start the migration piece of it, but you do, you can start at any time now. And there was an update article that went out, I believe about a week or so ago, recommending that 5.5.3 is the version for your agencies to upgrade to for the Horizon client. So the information should already be out there and introduced to you. So go ahead and start those upgrades anytime now. In addition to upgrading the client, the Horizon client, you'll need to also open up firewall access and ports. And that specific information will be provided to you in a kickoff meeting or initial meeting later on once we have your agencies scheduled. We are working to schedule the agencies now. We don't have a schedule yet of what agencies are going to go when, but if your agency is ready and you've upgraded to 5.5.3 and you guys are raring to go to get onto the new Horizon farm or environment, you can definitely reach out to the SSIS help desk and let us know that you are interested and you are ready and your agency has migrated to 5.5.3. We will be sending out an email with all of this information to the mentors following the coffee talk today. And there will also be information posted on County Link sometime this morning, possibly as well. So again, next steps, go ahead and start getting those 5.5.3 installs done. And it shouldn't take, you shouldn't have to uninstall and reinstall. You should be able to just upgrade that version depending on what version you're on now. And again, we are working on the migration schedule, so we do not have set agencies in place. And if your agency is willing, definitely let us know. We will have migration kickoff meetings, and I believe these meetings will contain multiple agencies at once. So for example, Monday morning, we might have the 5 agencies that are going to migrate that week all come together, and we can have a small training to show how the admin setup will work, answer questions about the 5.5.3 if there's any questions on those, the firewall information, and just any other questions you might have. And as we are going through the migration process, we do ask that any interest that you're showing, any questions you have, anything else about this migration from the legacy Horizon farm to the new Horizon environment, we do ask that you'll submit an SSIS help desk ticket so we can track and keep everything all in one place as we're going through with questions. So that's pretty much the basic overview of this project. Are there any questions that have come in or anything else? Or is there anything, Kent, that you would like to contribute or add to this? We're very eager
No,
to
you
get this
did a
going.
great job, Janelle. And yeah, it's, as Janelle's saying, this is going to be a fast moving rollout, but we do want to get folks on it. The feedback that we've gotten from the piloting counties is that the speed is much better in the New Horizon environment. So that's the main reason we want to get this out and pushed out.
All right.
There are a couple of questions. Oh, sorry, Kent.
Yep. So Chesney asked, would our IT department already be aware of this upgrade and they would be working through the upgrades? I don't know that your IT departments are aware of this. We're just now working on contacting everybody saying we're ready to do this. And yeah, the IT departments are very key for getting that Horizon client upgrade done. A lot of agencies would have their IT do a push or whoever manages the desktop applications. We will include IT contacts when we reach out to the agencies to say, hey, this is what we're looking at and this is when we're looking at. Can you accommodate that? Because like I said, like Janelle said, it's getting that Horizon client upgrade is the key. That's the most important part of this whole thing, is to get that client upgraded. And I know there's a lot of different versions and levels out there already. So
at this time, we're not recommending anything higher than 553. There is, and Kent, you might need to fill me in on the correct numbers, but on the versions, there are there's like a 2018 or 2021 or some sort of another number. We do not recommend that high of a version. So we're still recommending 553 at this time.
We're recommending that they go to 553 if they're not there yet. If they're already above 553, because there's a version 7 and version 8 of the Horizon client. 553 is on version 7. That's the one that we're recommending. If your agency is already on version 8, we'll have to find out. I don't know the question off the top of my head. I think it would be okay, but I just want to ask the question of our Horizon folks.
There's a couple questions. One question was if are all of the issues on the new environment worked out? They had heard that there was printing issues.
So there was, there's an issue with Scott County from printing, and it is related to how the printer, how fast the printer spools reports. We are still looking at the spooling issue. There is a way to mitigate that, and that's by having the printer set up that they don't start printing until the report is completely spooled to the printer. There's options on the printer. So if you have the printer set up to start printing as soon as it starts getting stuff, then you might run into that issue, the issue that Scott County has. If your printers are set up to, you know what, don't even start anything until you get the full report, then it's better. And that is like on like 200 or 300 page reports. Your short reports, little reports don't have that issue.
I'd like to piggyback on that.
And we are still actively looking at it.
Yep. And I'd like to piggyback on that a little bit too. We did do some testing with other agencies as well. And there are different speed reactions that we found within the different agencies. So there are some were quick like that and others took a minute, and then one other agency showed the same results as what we had found in Scott County. So The results for printing vary, and that's going to be dependent based on your agencies and how your printers and network are all set up, I believe, as well. So as we come to those, we will work through those with each agency. Or were there any other questions?
None in the box.
Okay.
Carrie just submitted one in the chat. Can part of our county be on the new Horizon client and others not move so we can pilot a select group at our county? Yes, you can roll out the Horizon upgrade, and I say you can do this anytime that you want. The migration, we don't want to migrate any agencies unless they're already on 553. But once you're migrated, you will still be able to use the legacy Horizon Farm. You'll have the option to use both until we get down past June. You know, once everybody's on, then we'll look at shutting down the legacy environment.
Yep.
But we want everybody to be on the new environment by June. If we start your agency in March, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have every one of your staff members on it by March, but the sooner the better.
Okay. We will be starting out with our initial meetings, and we can bring on 1 to 10 initial users for, a day or two at the beginning as well, so that they can test and make sure that everything's working with your agency before you just bring everybody on at one shot. So we will have that opportunity for you as well. And we will have a follow-up meeting once you are on, and some open discussions as to some of the issues that you might be finding. And we can work through those if you find other things that we are unaware of. Any other questions?
Janelle, we just had a few questions about instructions on how to do this, and will we provide instructions, and how that will work?
Yes. So if you, we will have some documentation going out for onboarding, and we will also have some user setup instructions as well. We are working at gathering all of those instructions and making sure that they're updated. And some of those instructions will include items such as exporting your grid settings, exporting your other settings, and importing those settings. You will need to do that. Your settings will not just transfer over from the legacy to the new farm. So you will need to import or export and import those grid settings. And then we'll have the details for the firewalls after we have your agency scheduled and distribute those to you as well. We may have a printer settings document. We'll have how to install 553 documents. I'm trying to think if there are any other ones that I'm not thinking of right now, but the general.
I think you got most of them.
Yeah, the general ideas of those different items that we want to bring over and make sure that everything's installed, and possibly a display recommendation setting as well. So. And again, each agency is different on how things are set up. So everything is not going to be the exact same for every agency coming on. All right. Are there any other questions that came in?
Nope.
All right. Well, we can go ahead and turn this over. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate this, and we're looking forward to this project and get going next week. So if you are ready, if you've already read that the update article from I believe it was last week or the week before, and you've installed 553, give us a shout and let us know if you're ready through the SSIS help desk.
Thanks, Janelle. Thanks, Kent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to share Marcia's presentation for everybody again in the chat, and over to you, Marcia.
All right, bear with me. I'm going to share my screen here and we will get the presentation going. So, all right, Eric, can you verify if you're seeing that presentation screen on the PowerPoint?
Yep, it's up.
Beautiful, thank you. Let me also, there we go, so I can see my screen. Hi, everyone. So I'm Marcia Riss again, and I'm going to be kind of going through the grids and general reports PowerPoint. We're going to jump back and forth between SSIS and the PowerPoint. So hopefully I have that all under control. I've practiced a little bit. A few housekeeping items before we get started. With so many attendees, we've obviously muted everybody to ensure everyone can hear. Feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A. And we're going to do our best to get to them. A little bit short on time since we've added a little bit extra information. So hopefully I can get to everything. Anything that we can't get to, we can follow up after. So make sure if you've logged in like as anonymous, sometimes I see that and then we don't know who to get back to. It'd be great if you included your name in there. I've asked our panelists to watch for questions. I am not as talented as Eric, who does these usually, in watching everything, and I know I'll get distracted and then lose my train of thought. So I've asked our panelists to just kind of give me a heads up if there's something that we can cover really quickly. If it's something more complex kind of question that comes in, we may wait till the end of the presentation or even after if we don't have time. So, but we will get back to everybody. So. I think that's what I have for housekeeping kinds of items. And let's see if I can maneuver here. So we are going to look at some of the different features to run reports and pull data using information in SSIS. So there is so much information in SSIS and many different ways to access the data. We're going to look at SSIS grid functionality and walk you through options that SSIS offers to customize those grids and the grid-based reports. So we're also going to look at a few of the general reports. Hopefully that's towards the end of it, but I'm hoping I have time to go through a few, kind of give you some examples, particularly focusing on grid type reports with examples of how you might customize and use various reports in SSIS. So we're going to start with grid functionality. So personally, I love the grids. Anytime you see a row or column of information in SSIS, that's a grid, and they're everywhere in SSIS. Wherever there's a grid, there's a potential report. So not just in general reports, but anywhere that you see a grid. So grids are flexible. They can be manipulated to get more or less specific data, whatever you are really wanting. Grid options are found throughout SSIS, including the various searches and within many of the general reports, so grid-based ones. And I'll show you the difference in our grid-based reports and our PDF type reports. SSIS grids are tools that offer flexible and unique ways to find, manage, and organize the information contained in SSIS. They can be used to focalize a search, provide a flexible way to get at needed information, and be used as a reporting tool, even outside of those general reports that I mentioned. So one of the most common things that I like to look at is using the field chooser. We're going to look at that, give you some examples of how to do that. We're going to cover sorting, grid options. You can use grids in SSIS to find those information, any information that you're really wanting to create a report, and then use the enhanced grid features that we're going to cover to create the look and the feel of the report that you want. You can create, save, share the grid settings after you've formatted the grid. It makes it easier to recreate and compare data using the same parameters over time. So there are many different features available in grids to get to the details and get the look that you want. Some of the more common features used are the field chooser, resizing columns, using footers for counts, grand totals, subtotals, different sorting options, group by options, auto filters. Changes made to the grids are also saved and remain as intended by the user until they're changed again or restored to default settings. So really handy tool that I don't think people use very often. or at least not often enough, I think. I think it's really great. There's a link to the grid options tutorial and the grids module document on this particular slide. So if you've downloaded the slides, you'll have those. Also, I believe Eric is throwing those in the chat for everybody in case you want those. I'm going to mention those a couple of times, I think, throughout here. I think they're still good documents. You're going to, if you open them up, they're still a little dated, you know, time-wise, but I did look through them all and just made sure, hey, is this still valid? Is this still right? And they really were when I was going through prepping for this training. So I think that they're pretty good. So we're going to talk first about Field Chooser. So the Field Chooser is also called the Column Chooser. I'm going to try to stick to one term. I kind of go back and forth, but it's found directly to the left of the grid headers. So if you'll notice here on the PowerPoint slide, right here next to, here's the headers here, and to the left of the headers is where you're going to see that. You can use it to select or deselect column headers from the Field Chooser dropdown. What else did I want to say about that? So if you also are wanting to move columns, you can move those columns. So like, let's say you've added some of these columns, you've checked the boxes, now they're showing up in your column headers. You can move those columns around. A lot of people don't realize you can just click and drag column headers. So once you have them up, if you click on a column header, and so for example, here there's intake type, I've clicked on it and dragged it over, I can move it over to another position in those column headers. So wherever you see those green arrows, if you're clicking and dragging it up and off of your grid or off of that header row, you're going to see an X will show over top of the header that you've chosen. And then that just means that if I drop it wherever the X is, it's going to pull it off of my grid headers. So if I wanted to add that back in, I'm going to come back to my column chooser, my field chooser, and recheck the box that I had taken off. So you can kind of do it either way. You can check the boxes, or you can literally click and drag to move things around or take them off. I know I wanted to say one more thing on this. Actually, I think we'll go to the next screen and I'll show you some examples. I think that's the easiest way to look at these. So some common columns to add. So this isn't just about reports. Remember, I said those grids are all over the place, and there's oftentimes some column headers that are more helpful than just the default column headers that you might be already seeing. So I'm going to give you a few of these examples, and I've written them down here for you, but I'm going to jump into SSIS, and we're just going to take a quick look at some things that you might want to pull forward into your grids. So let's see if I can pull SSIS up now. And maybe now it doesn't. Oh, there it comes. Eric, can you tell me? I just want to make sure, is SSIS showing?
Yep, you're good.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to first of all pull up the activity log. So for those agencies that are like 100% time recorders, they're using the activity log to do time recording. I know when I did trainings back at St. Louis County, I would always recommend that in the activity log that workers would add in the purpose column. So notice when I first come into my activity log, I just have the default columns, and you don't see to the left of the headers, you don't actually see that column chooser yet. And that's because I don't have any information showing. So I can't adjust my columns and have those save, or my column headers. I also can't use the little column chooser until I have at least one line of data or more showing. So I'm going to pull up some notes. Notice as soon as I did my refresh and I have at least one row showing, I have that little column header showing. And if I hover over it, it says click here to show, hide, or move columns. If I click on it, there I get my choices. And now I can come in here and add in things like the one I always recommend for this particular screen is adding in the purpose column. So when I add that one in, anything that was written on the purpose line in the note is going to show in your purpose column. Super handy if you're using also the find panel, which we're going to go over in a little bit as well, so that you can search for something specific without having to open every individual note to see, hey, when did I do, in this case, the licensing annual review? When did I do that? Which one of these, 10 notes that might be in the same time period? Instead, if I wrote that in my purpose column, or my purpose line, it's going to show because I have that column showing. So super handy to have that one. In the work group folder, so I'm going to pull up my caseload list and just show you a work group folder real quick. Hopefully real quick. There we are. So in my caseload list, if I were looking for, we'll pull up a person here. We'll pull up Amy Foster, and we're going to look at, I want to see, hey, is Amy open with any other work groups? So I have her, well, obviously you can see I'm open with a bunch of them for her, but we're going to look like if I was another worker looking, hey, I have this thing assigned to me. I want to see if Amy's open with anything else. I can open up her work group and intake folder, go to her work group folder. And instead of, so sometimes you come in, and especially in children and family services, I find there might be a whole lot of history with certain families. And I don't want to have to click on each individual work group to figure out which one is somebody open with. So a quick way to do that would be to click on the work group folder itself and use that grid. So a lot of times, most of them, I wouldn't say all, but most of them, when you click on the actual note itself, so the folder, you'll get a grid view of that information under that folder. And that means you can use the grid options, right? So one of the grid options that I want to do is I want to come in here and choose my column chooser and choose to include things like the close date and time. I might include the unit so that I can quickly see which unit is this assigned to. I can click on any one of the headers. I prefer to click on the close date and time header if I have that in here, so that I can really quickly look and see, well, which work groups are still open, right? So if I had a list of like 20 work groups in here, I could see right at the top, oh, these are the ones that are still open because I've included this column. I can now also quickly see who's the worker unit it is assigned to. So again, a little quicker than me clicking on every individual work group, especially for those that you have a lot of work groups. So I like to add those types of things. Another one in chronology. And so let's use, actually that's a perfect work group for this. In chronology, so same type of thing. A lot of times I see people make the mistake. I think people are afraid of the grids, right? Don't know how to use them, right? I see them expand chronology and go into case notes. But really, it's more effective if you look at chronology as a whole. So that's going to include anything that you have in chronology, whether that be case notes, contacts, activities, documents, any of those things. And if I look at them in the grid view, I can come in here and add some additional things. So maybe I want to add from my column chooser. I want to add, that long description, I've already added it actually. So I don't think it comes in on default, but the long description works as it shows you for anything that's a contact, it's going to show me what was written in the purpose line. So again, it's saving you time if there was, 100 notes in here and I can see the contacts that actually have that purpose line information in them, then I'm going to be able to quickly go into them and find whatever note I'm looking for versus me looking up every individual note. The other thing you'll notice in here that I'll just make note of because we have the screen up is I would always uncheck time note when I come into here. I think people go into case notes often thinking that's my note, but that's really your timestamped duplicate copy of your contacts and activities. So sometimes you think, oh gosh, SSIS has changed the date on me. Nope, it hasn't. You're just looking at the date that when you look at case notes, you're looking at the date that this person put it in SSIS. So it's the timestamp of when something was entered in SSIS. So a good rule of thumb is use the grid for chronology, uncheck time note. It'll save that way then for the next time you come in here. I usually leave everything else. And then I can use, adding my long description or any other column that I might want to choose. Sort by date. Again, you can sort by just clicking on that column header. So that's a really good one for chronology that I would always remind people to look at that way. And then one more, person search screen. I want to pull up our person search screen. Another one for column headers that I think are important to add into SSIS. I will pull up Amy here. So here we have an example of, I have Amy, I have multiple items for her showing up, right? I happen to know this, but this is her maiden name. This name shows up twice in here. A lot of times we we come in here and we wonder, well, which one should we choose, right? Because I'm not positive, are they going to bring me to the same place? Well, the way to know if they're going to bring you to the same place is to see if they're all connected to the same SSIS person number. That's the unique identifier for a person in SSIS and all their information. So again, this is a grid, so it has that column chooser box or header chooser. So when you come in here, there's a bunch of additional options. I like to choose things like the PMI. I might choose the Swindex if it's somebody who needs to look at that as well. But the SSIS person number is what I recommend for workers to pull in, especially like intake workers, people who are, adding people to work groups, those kinds of things. If you have this person number showing and they're all the same number, it tells you right off the bat, whichever one I go to, whichever one I go into that county detail or state detail for, it's the same person information. I don't need to also check the other 2 rows here to see if it's the same information. As soon as I see that person number, I know it's bringing me to the same set of information. If they're different person numbers, however, whether right or wrong, SSIS is believing they're 2 different people or 2 different identities. So you might want to check with your coordinator if you're not sure why that is, if you believe that they're the same person, but they're 2 different ones before you choose them. Make sure that you're checking with them if you're not sure how to decide, is this the right person or not that I want, or if they need to be merged, I should say too. Okay, so a good rule of thumb that I think, and I'm going to jump back over to our PowerPoint here. Maybe. There you go. A good rule of thumb, if you have a grid, if you're looking at a grid, again, they're everywhere. Check to see what column options are available. There are very often more helpful column options that are available than whatever the default setting is. So it's really a nice thing to check on that periodically. If you haven't gotten in the habit of doing that, do that now. Get in the habit of looking at them every once in a while. Sometimes columns are added as well as additional options. So there's oftentimes some really helpful columns to add in there. All right. So grid menu options. So we're going to review several, but not all of these options today. The grid options menu can be accessed by right-clicking on any one of the grid headers. Before using the grid options to adjust your grid, be sure you have at least that 1 row of results displaying in the grid. Otherwise, the adjustments that you're making are not going to save for the next time that you go in and you want to view the results. So the grid menu options are enabled whenever the search results display in the grid, so that 1 row or more. A grid report is generated or a preview screen is available and a grid is displayed above the detailed information. Okay, so pretty much when you see the grid and there's any information in there. Okay.
Marsha, we have one quick question.
Go ahead.
Can you easily reset the grid column headers back to the default columns for purposes of training?
Yes, absolutely. Super good question. I actually did that right this morning before I came in here. Yeah, that's all you need to do. And I can show that too, but it's pretty easy if you right click. So you'll see here, I have my grid options box. If you click on the grid settings, you have a reset grids to default option under the grid settings. And that's all you have to do. You would have to do that in each individual grid if you're doing it this way, which I like because I don't want to get rid of all the grids I've done. You could certainly, there's ways to reset all your grids, but this is what I would recommend. So that, like if you're right before a training, I would always go in and I knew which grids I was going to always pull up and I would just go reset them to the grid default so that I could show them again. Hopefully that answered. Okay, so we're going to go through the first few things, the grid menu options, the printing grid. Print grid brings up a print preview where you can save, print, and preview the document. So to save, you'll need to already have mapped your drives. And then when saving, be sure to find that pre-mapped drive. Remember, since we centralized, when you see desktop, it just says desktop, that's not your desktop. So just confusing enough, we can't get rid of that. I know that they've asked before, but the desktop on and then whatever your computer number is, that's usually your desktop. So that if you map your drive to your desktop, it will say desktop on and like, whatever your computer ID at your agency is. That's what you want to choose. Your map drives will be labeled with your computer ID given by your agency. So these are going to vary. We can't just give out like, here's what yours is going to be. I don't know what yours is going to be. But it's usually easy to see once you get in there and as long as you've already mapped. So you can see the VMware Horizon client and SSIS agency user link. This includes instructions for mapping drives. And that is also available out on the SSIS worker documentation page under the Horizon section. So grid menu options, exporting grid. So there's a few different exporting grids. So I'm going to tell you the difference between these. It took me a while to figure them out. Export grid, so use to transfer the grid or report data to another program such as Excel spreadsheet. So I used to use this a lot. I would pull data for our agency. I'd export to Excel. It's really handy to use Excel because you can add things like pivot charts and pivot tables, things to kind of tell a picture, give a picture of the data. It's sometimes easier for people who are just wanting a summary kind of data information. So there's other options too. You can export to HTML, text, comma, delimited, and XML. But I think Excel is probably one of the more commonly used ones. Real handy for those additional data analyzing tools that maybe aren't available in SSIS. If you choose export grid PDF, obviously it's exporting the grid to PDF. Take note if you're choosing this option. I think a lot of people, we like PDFs in a lot of ways, but for data-wise, it's not always the best choice because depending on whoever's getting that, they might not be able to do much with. So depending on their version of like a PDF, do they have edit rights to PDFs? A lot of people don't. I know at my agency, I didn't. And so PDF wouldn't have been very helpful because I couldn't really adjust the data or utilize other tools that I might want to use. So another option for exporting the grid is exporting the raw grid. So this option will transfer all of the available data in the identified grid. So for example, you may have chosen 3 of the 10 columns to show in your grid when you export, but all 10 of the columns are so like in SSIS, I should say, right? You're showing 3 of the columns that I've got my grid up. I look at 3 of the columns, but there's in my little column chooser, there may be 10 additional columns available. So all of those columns and their information are going to be exported if I choose export raw grid. Also, some of the columns, such as date columns, might include a little bit more detail than what you're seeing in SSIS if you choose that column. So some columns in SSIS, it might be set to, like the formatting set so that you just see maybe the short date, right? So 2/10/22. So it's just going to have that date. But when you export raw data, if the data is available back in the data tables or like the date and the time, you might get the full date with even a timestamp on it, depending on what it is. So depending on what's available in the data tables, kind of behind the scenes, you're going to get everything if you export raw grid. So sometimes that's really handy. Sometimes it's too much. So you kind of get to decide. If I just want to export the grid, I'm going to use export grid. If I want everything possible that I could get from this grid data available, I'm going to choose export raw grid. So kind of nice to have those options. Sort ascending or descending. You can use those options, the sort ascending or descending by clicking in the column header or using the grid menu option. So a gray arrow displays, see if you can see that, but it's not too tiny. So like here on CP report track, you can see the little gray arrow next to it. That just means at some point before when I use this, I had clicked on the CP report track column header here, and that tells me that all this information is now sorted by the CP report track. It's sorted ascending. Okay, if I click on it again, it's going to have a little down arrow, and that's going to mean it's sorting descending, right? So for me, I've always thought it's easier to just go ahead and click on that, but you certainly could right click on it and then choose sort ascending or sort descending or clear sorting to get rid of that sort as well. So for grids that you have groupings, you can sort by a chosen column in the overall grid headings, as well as within the grouping level column. So for example, here, not only could I have sorted by just one of the items in the column heading, but because there's a group already, I think this was the default setting for this particular one. Because there was a group added in here, it's actually allowing me to sort by the group itself as well. So CP report track. So I see things in my groupings are no CP report track, FA, FAC, or INV. And then those are in alphabetical order, right? And we're going to look at groupings too. So don't worry too much about that. We're going to get back to that What else do I want to say about that? I think that's it. View. I like the view section, and it took me a long time to remember all the additional options under the view section and remember to go there for those. So make sure that you're checking that out if you haven't already. The view option in the grid menu provides additional menu options to allow users to have grids display in various ways, right? So this provides opportunities for further customization of your grids. To access the view menu, you can right-click on any one of your grid headers, doesn't matter which one, to the first view of the grid menu options. You just have to hover over view, right? And then you're going to see these additional options. And we're going to go through some of these. So the first is the preview option, and this allows you to view proofing information in addition to grid data. So the proofing information can be printed or exported with grid data. Preview is a fiscal function. So you're not going to see this everywhere. You're not always going to have that option. Preview is a fiscal function and only displays as an option on proofing tabs. So those of you who are not familiar with proofing, you could ignore this one. It would be available on screens such as healthcare claiming and the child foster care report. This function allows users to view proofing information in addition to the grid data. To use from a report with the proofing option, you would first click within the grid results. So if you don't do it in this way, if you just came into this grid, I hadn't clicked on any of my rows. Sometimes there's like a lag and it doesn't automatically show me the proofing information, but it's my understanding that if you first click on one of the rows within your grid, then like maybe the first row, right? Then right click on a column header in the grid, then click on the view and select preview, and then it should pull up. So that's my understanding from our fiscal workers. Melissa and Molly, anything to add there? Did I say that right?
I think you got
Marcia,
it.
yep, you got it.
Awesome, thank you. All right. So view header and row auto height. I will tell you, so 16 years in SSIS, I don't think I ever used these until like last month, maybe a couple of weeks ago when an agency called with a question about this. So very timely that this came up. So the header auto height, when checked, this feature automatically adjusts the header's height based on the sizing of the columns so that all your text is visible, right, in those headers. So if you come into a particular grid and something's cut off where you can't see the whole thing, you can come into your view little menu when you hover over view and choose either your header or if it's a row that's being cut off, choose the row auto height. So really it's like a wraparound text, same as you would see in something like Excel, right? It would wrap the text around within the box so that you can see it also expanding that. So same thing with row auto height. I know we recently ran into this, it was within the repository. So for those of you who use the repository, if you're having something cut off and it's like, oh, I want to see the whole thing, especially when I export things getting cut off. If you do this ahead of time while you're still in SSIS before you export, then it works just fine. So then you won't have anything cut off. So the find panel, this I would say, I think it was just added a few years ago, this option, and this is probably my favorite function within grids. And in SSIS, I think it's so handy. This is the find panel, and it gives users ability to search for a keyword or phrase within the data shown in a grid. So this can be used to help find and sort the data within grids. A few useful places to use the find panel. And I'm going to show you a couple examples of these of why I think this is useful. So external documents within chronology, remember I pointed out that long description column and using that purpose line. Activity log, again, that purpose column. We can sort by those information if you're actually writing things in there and you have that column showing. And then obviously fiscal stuff you could sort for or search for something specifically as well. But let's just jump into SSIS and show an example. The hard part of switching back and forth. Here we are. Okay, oops, I think I switched slides here. Now let me pull it back up.
It was there.
Was it there?
But now
okay.
It's not.
And now it's not. Okay, I wasn't seeing it. Okay, now I'm seeing it. Are you seeing it now?
Yep.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, so external documents. So I'm going to go to tools, external documents. And hopefully it doesn't take too long to pull it up. So when I have external documents, and this is a real simple grid, it's only got a few options for columns. I have all of them chosen and showing right now. So it's kind of a nice, if you're doing trainings for staff, this is a nice one I always used to use to kind of get them comfortable with it before I started bumping into more complicated grids. But this one I really like. So in here, for example, I want to search something that maybe has the word adoption in it. Maybe it's an adoption specific document. However, I'm not positive if the name of the document started with the word adoption. So I'm not sure that it actually, I'm going to find it right up here. And rather than me digging through and hoping I don't overlook it, I'm going to use the find panel. And to use the find panel, I have a couple options to get there. I can either right click on the header, on any header, doesn't matter which one. I can hover over view and choose that find panel right there. There's also the find panel option right here, right within the main grid options menu. But really how I usually do it, I think I've just gotten in the habit because you can do this in PDFs as well, is I click anywhere within the grid and I choose a Control F. So works the same way. Pulls up your find panel. So it has your little keyword, essentially what it is. And so now, oops, adoption, I have to spell it right though. So if I choose adoption now, real quickly, I can see all of the items that were in my grid, which are the same items that I see here over in the tree view side of things. I have all of the items that have the word adoption in somewhere within the grid, right? So since I have the title pulling in, there's that word adoption. Oh yeah, there's that item that I wanted. So I really like this one. It's really just another way to kind of filter information based on a keyword. So it might not be something that you have directly within the filter options, which we're going to look at in a moment. So you can use this pretty handy. Another place that I like to use it is over in chronology. So we were there a little earlier. So like when we're here in chronology, if I have a lot of notes in here, maybe I'm looking for like, let's say the ICWA information. So again, Control F in this particular grid. And I just want all the notes that have ICWA written in the long description, which is that purpose line. Really handy to be able to find those specific notes, again, versus me opening every single note to look for it, right? Same kind of thing back here on my activity log. And if you have the staff that are doing like time recording and things, if you have them using some real consistent language, you can do a lot with this. So I know in St. Louis County, we actually did some kind of reporting where we would use like the purpose line to write ICWA in for any ICWA specific work to figure out how much time we were spending on ICWA specific additional work after those new fields in SSIS were added. So things like that, you can kind of get some data from, right? So again, right here, Control F or add your find panel. And remember, these are going to save. So the next time I come to this screen, this find panel is still going to be here, even if I come in tomorrow, as long as I didn't reset my profile or reset my grid settings, they're still going to be here just the way I left it the last time. So really handy to be able to find things real quick. So again, maybe I'm looking for a review. I want to find wherever I wrote review in for whatever issue or whatever it may be. So that is your activity log. And then fiscal, Melissa, I think this is the one where you had a couple of additional examples of what you might use this for in some of the fiscal reports.
Yep. So usually if I'm working like right in the child foster care report and I'm looking for a specific license, or if I'm looking for only the tribal licenses, I'll use the find search to find those specific payments. The other idea that I've used more recently was in healthcare claiming, same kind of thing. I'm looking for like a sibling group. So I would type in their last name, or maybe I'm looking for a vendor, type in the last name, like things like that. So just some options. It's really limited or unlimited on how you can use the find action.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
One question to Marcia.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does the find panel in chronology grid find the word inside the notes or only find the text in the grid?
Good question. It would have to be something that you are including in your grid. So that's why the purpose line, that's kind of a nice additional place to find something. But yeah, if it's a word in your note and you didn't include that in the purpose line, it's not going to find that. Other thing to note is in that chronology section, I know there's an enhancement out there because I know I was on that team that reviewed that a while back and a lot of agencies wanted it. There's an enhancement out there for that purpose line in the chronology section. It's like I said, it's called the long description there. Currently, the way that works is anything that's a contact will show purpose line information. But if it's an activity, so anything that's not a contact, if it's an activity, it actually shows whatever's in your activity field. So it might say coordination rather than whatever you've written in the purpose line field. So keep that in mind if you're digging for information in there. So that's not perfect scenario. Hopefully at some point we can get that switched over so that it works really as showing the purpose line, same as activity log for everything. But good question. Yeah, I wish it could look for everything in your notes, but it doesn't work that way. You would have to pull in the column you wanted to search from. Okay, so let's move on. Auto filters, another really great option. So for those that are like a little bit familiar with Excel, some really good functionality that Excel has is similar to this, where it has the auto filter options where you can add filters to columns and then filter information really quickly. You know, you can go through a lot of information to find, I just want these pieces, everything that matches this, right? So if you hover over view, you can see that here again in your grid options box. So I'm right clicking on that column header, hovering over view and choosing auto filter. When I choose that, there'll be a little check mark next to it once I've chosen that. So if you go in there now and you see a check mark, it means it's already on. But once it's on, and for the grid that you're looking at, any of the little column header grids that you see here, they'll have a little tiny, when you hover over them, only when you hover, they'll have a little tiny box with an arrow in it in the right-hand corner. And so I think we can see that on this slide. So it looks just like this. And then if you click on it, it'll have the options. So for example, in the one that we were just looking at in the external documents, we have document ID, title, and origin. Well, origin only has a couple of options. The origin is either going to be county or DHS. So if instead of me digging for all of these, if I know the document I'm looking for is a county-based document, I'm just going to click on county, and real quick, I'm just going to see everything that has county in the origin column, and it's going to filter out all the DHS items. So then I can find the document I'm looking for quicker, right? Once the auto filter is turned on, any column heading you want and filter it, and click on drop down box in the top right to access the filter. So again, that's the same way it works in Excel if you're familiar with that. Let's see, what else do I want to say about this? Additional view options such as how to add filter row or use the filter builder and filter box to create and save filters can be found in the grids module. So that's available on the SSIS worker documentation page. And I believe we also have, I think we already put that on slide 4. We had the link as well for the grids module. So if you're looking for a little bit more information on kind of details of how to use that one, but really great. I use this all over the place. One thing to note on this. So remember I said grids are going to save your settings. So let's say I put it in as county, right? And then tomorrow I come back in here looking for things and I open up my grid options box because I had I'm sorry, not my grid options box. I open up my external documents grid. And I only see county documents. I'm like, wow, this doesn't look right. I'm missing a bunch of things. Well, what you're going to see is whenever you've used the filter, if it's on still, it's filtering something, this is going to be lit up. Usually the color is blue, but it may be a little different based on whatever your settings are on your desktop for coloring, but it will be lit up. So even when I'm not hovered over it, I will see this and then I'll know, oh, there's a filter still on in my system. So it's just good to take note if you start using these things to kind of note whenever you come into a grid as well. Oh shoot, I still have that grid filter on because I'm not seeing all the information then, and you want to know, is this everything or not? To turn it off, I would just come back here, click on my little grid option box and my little filter, and click all to choose to include everything once again. So hopefully that makes sense. Another option under the grid menu is the group by box. This is another really great functionality, especially when you have a lot of data showing and you want to group things, make it a little bit more palatable so it's understandable. So instead of just having a huge grid full of information, I can group them all into a few specific groups when I'm looking for data. So it allows users to group items by one or more selected columns. The user can create a customized report for the data in the grid by grouping the fields. So there's the group by this field and the group by box. Okay. I'm going to show this in a second here, but I want to first say a couple things about this. So the group by this field option creates subgroups using filter options available for the chosen column. So the group by box allows the user to manually move the column headers to create the groupings by clicking on a header and dragging it. So I'm going to show you, we're going to pull up the CP report track. And that's what this one is right here, but I'm going to actually jump into SSIS. I think we're okay on time so far. So let's do that. And okay, so you should be seeing SSIS. And let's pull in general reports. And I'm going to use the case list general report. This is another one I was going to use. So if we don't get time to go through much for general reports, this is one of the ones I was going to go through anyhow. So, so I'm going to choose, I want to look at this year. I'm typing in here, but again, you can use the drop downs if you're not sure of what the options are for what period, what's the scope that I want to include. I know that this is going to be a big one. I'm going to include 5,000. I'm going to choose, actually, you know what? I'm not going to worry about that. The max results, if you know it's going to be more than 500, you're going to want to up that max results. But actually, let's use a simpler one just to keep our time okay here. I'm going to use my unit. So risk social service unit, I'm going to choose to include everything. So again, notice that there's two case lists here. We're going to talk about this in a little bit. The one I chose is the blue and white icon. This is a grid type report. Okay, so that's what we're looking at right now for this example. And I'm going to include everything, whether it was open or closed. So as long as it was open for 1 day or more, that means within this year, and any program type that was included in this unit. So that's what I'm going to search for so we can show these groupings. What did I do wrong here? Of course. Oh, maybe I don't want to do it this way. Let's see. Let's say today. Oops. Today, I think I did all unit. Of course, I'm going to run into issues now that I'm on the spot. There we are. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so here's the default setting for this particular grid report. So again, remember, depending on what you're looking for, these may not be the fields that I want. These may not be the columns that are most helpful in my situation. So I can click and drag things to get them out of here. I may not want these ones that are just empty because they're not all CP stuff or CP maltreatment items. I might want to come in here and add additional options in here. So let's say I'm going to add in a few other things. I'm going to add an ICWA program. Let's add status. These are like some common ones I would add if I was being asked to prepare some data. A lot of times they want, well, I only want the assessment ones, or I only want the case management ones, right? I only want certain program types, right? So if I right click on this, and again, any header would work, so it doesn't really matter which one. If I right click over here, for example, it works the same way. I can say I want to do add a group by box. Come on. I'm freezing up for a second. There we are. So if I add a group by box, it's just going to add that group by column for me. So the same thing that we saw, and of course I'm freezing. And I had a feeling that would happen at some point here. So I might just jump back into the PowerPoint if this doesn't catch up with me soon. There we are. Looks like it might be. Sorry, bear with me. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get it. Okay, so let's jump back into the PowerPoint here. I think I can show you here too. So same kind of thing though, I would have either of these options. If I said group by this field, it's going to add my grouping based on whichever column that I right clicked on. If I do a group by box, it doesn't matter which column header that I choose that one on, it'll add the additional column up above my grid headers. And I'll show you that example back on our PowerPoint. So, oh gosh, it doesn't even want to go away all the way. Right here. So there it is. So here's that group by box. I've just literally clicked and dragged the CP report track, because that was one of the columns that I had available. I clicked and dragged it from the column headers into this gray box, right? And that app made it so that all of the data that was in here of the, however many numbers, I think there's 2,900. So however many there were, those are all now grouped within these different sections. So it's just a nice way to be able to get to that data real quick. I really like that. I use that a lot, those kinds of group by box. Remember, again, that's going to save that way. That's great for those of you who might want to pull the same data the same way each time. You're going to be able to come back here and just reset your dates, and there's the data. It's all set up for you. Your report's all set up for you. So it still works pretty nice. In this example, the CP report track column's been grouped in the grid. Group footers with counts have also been added to the subgroups. So again, we're going to go the next slide. That's what we're going to go through is those footers. So those footers will be able to add sub footers as well, or subgroup footers, and then add counts in there. So those are kind of nice again. So you're not doing a lot of manual data tracking. So here we go. Footers and group footers can be added to grids. Once you've added a footer or group footer to the grid, you can right click within the footer beneath the column that you want to include the additional information on, such as a count, sum. So those are like a couple of the options. So you see sum, min, max, count, average, and none, right? So I use count a lot. I'm a worker. I'm counting how many work groups, how many, CMRs, child maltreatment reports, those types of things. In fiscal, you might be using like, hey, I want the sum of this particular column, or I want to get the minimum or the maximum item in here, or the average. So really can be really handy for those things. So the footers can be added to the grid as a whole. So you can see on this example, there's the grid as a whole. There's 2,905 work groups that have a CP report track, or I'm sorry, a CP maltreatment report in here that I'm using with this case list one. I have it grouped by CP report track. I also have additional group footers with the counts in there. So I can see, okay, so of this 2,905, I have, this many that have no, so they're probably screened out items, so they don't have a track. 1,900 CP report tracks, 339 turned out to be FAs, 108 FACs. So you kind of can see where you can pull together a lot of information real quick. Really handy. Alignment, best fit, and best fit all columns. So most columns, for your alignment, most columns are going to default to the left for columns that begin with words and names, and to the right for numeric columns, but you can adjust those however you choose, or however it's easiest to read those. So everybody kind of can personalize their own on what works best for them and makes sense when you're looking at your grids. So you can just have to right click, go to that alignment, and choose which one you want. The best fit broadens or narrows a specific column selected automatically depending on your monitor and window size. And same with best fit all columns. It's going to do the same thing, but it's going to do all the columns at once. And again, it's depending on your monitor and window size. So as we're moving SSIS around from different monitors or laptops, things like that, you might see, or resizing, right, your SSIS screen, you'll notice that sometimes it makes it really hard to read certain columns. Things get all bunched up. Personally, I would go in and oftentimes just reset to best fit all columns. So I'm going to right click on a header, choose best fit all columns, just so it kind of moves things around. It's not perfect, as it doesn't always, fix everything for me. I still might need to do a little manually resizing just by clicking between my column headers and kind of manually readjusting what you can do. Sometimes it saves me time. I'm not having to do that for every individual column, right? So it's a nice little handy tool. So grid settings can be saved, restored, and shared from SSIS. So I know Janelle had mentioned earlier, you're going to lose your grid settings. If you are adjusting these, you're making a lot of personalizations on these, you're going to want to, before you move to that Horizon farm, you're going to want to make sure that you've saved those grid settings. So you've uploaded them to your computer on one of your map drives. And so then once you're moved over, you're going to be able to, I should say download. And then you should be able to upload those saved settings. Another nice feature is you can also share those grid settings. So you can email right from there, right from when you go to save your grid settings, you can actually have an option for sharing and emailing to someone else. So if you have a few of you that maybe back up each other, run certain reports all the time, then you can make sure that you all are using the exact same grid settings for those. So it's kind of nice to do those things. I'm not going to go through those instructions. I know that those Eric just went through in January when we had the coffee talk. And those instructions are also available out on the SSIS worker documentation page, found on the grids document located there, as well as you can go to the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy webpage, which I have the link for here as well, and look at the January coffee talk where he has both the presentation itself. So if you want the video, that's there, as well as the little PowerPoint as well. So those are all there if you need some help with doing that. All right, let's see where we're at on time. We have running short a little, but I'm going to go through at least one of these. I want to go through a couple of the slides here on general reports and go through at least one general report a little bit more to give you some ideas, and then we'll have time to have a little bit of question time. So let's look at some of the predefined or canned reports available in general reports. So this is a review of tools, general reports. Some of you have already used these reports, but we wanted to make sure that you understand the range of functionality available. So general reports are available from the tools menu in SSIS. There are many folders available, and both worker-related and fiscal-related reports are included. Just as normal casework crosses over fiscal and worker areas, these reports are shared as well. All of the fiscal-related general reports are also available, and fiscal workers will be more familiar with oftentimes from their corresponding sections of the task panel. So today we're really going to go through the general reports items a little bit more for the worker side. I think they're just a little bit simpler to go through, especially for those who aren't as familiar with all the fiscal stuff. But fiscal grids and reports work really the same way as the other grid reports. So they have the same grid functionality in SSIS. They often have a lot more column options included by both default and as just options to add. So they can look a little bit more complicated, but really they work the same way. Today, I'm going to highlight just a few of those specific reports, but there's a lot out there. So this is really just to give you an idea. And our fiscal staff will offer more fiscal-oriented reports training in the future. So I know that they've talked about that, and you'll probably see something out in future months for one of the coffee talks. So the two types of reports that you see, and we kind of looked at that earlier. Remember, I said, hey, we're using the blue and white grid report for the case list report. So there was a black and white icon and a blue and white icon. So the black and white icon is called a banded report. I call them PDF reports. I think a lot of people do because that's what you get. You get a PDF if you run that particular one. For those reports that have this black and white icon under general reports, you're going to use the setup screen to customize your report. And then you get a PDF version if you want to print something, right? So you don't have that same flexibility. So you might have a few more things available to you in the setup screen to help you customize it. But once you get the output, it's pretty fixed. The enhanced grid reports, also I'm calling those grid reports because I think that's what most of us call those. The enhanced grid reports looks like this. So you have the little icon with the blue and white icon. There are several reports out there under general reports where you have the exact same name, but you have the two different icons. That's just letting you know it's really got the same data components in there, but you have just the different type and different flexibility with them. So for the enhanced grid reports, you're going to use the setup screen and grid functionality to customize, right? So you might have a few less things that you have to choose within the setup screen because you get that grid functionality to add things like filters and sorting and all of those things directly on the report. So here's an example of the setup screen for the PDF type report, right? So in this one, for the SSIS case list report, I pulled that one up. Still, I'm choosing the same kind of scope. I'm running it, on this case, I ran it for department, but keep in mind, if you have, especially for those of you in some bigger agencies, running these for too big of a scope, if you're, having a whole year or a really big area, maybe the whole department, you may find that SSIS is going to appear to freeze up on you because it's taking so long to run a report. It's probably actually running. It can take a long time to run those bigger reports. If you don't need that much data, scope, make sure that you're minimizing the scope of that report right in the setup. So if you bring that down so that you're not having so much for it to pull, it's going to just take you less time to pull that report, which most of us prefer it to take less time, right? So I can choose, I just want my search criteria to display on the first page. The notes display options, again, display on the report notes. I can say first page only, work group status. I'm choosing all, in other words, not just things that are closed this year, not just things that are open this year, but things that were open 1 day or more, if I say all, during the time period that I chose. And in this instance, you'll notice I have the little sort order here. So this is one that you don't see on the grid type reports because you're sorting within the grid itself. On a lot of these PDF ones, you have this little sort order option. So what you can do is you can choose, hey, I want it to sort by primary worker in this case. So I check that box, and primary worker was actually originally down here. And then I used a little arrow to move it up because that's why I said I want my first sort to be on primary worker. And then for the work groups underneath a particular primary worker, I wanted their work groups sorted by program and sorted by work group name then, right? So if I did that and I clicked search, then I get this. So here's an example of that report output for the case list, banded or PDF type report. When viewing on the preview tab screen, if there are multiple pages, remember you're going to need to use those arrows at the top of the tab. So notice there's the little arrows right here. A lot of us try to scroll down because we're so used to being able to do that, but that's not going to go anywhere. You're just going to see the first page. So instead, you're going to use these little arrows to move from page to page if you're wanting to look further. What else did I want to say about that? Oh, here. So I mentioned this real quickly earlier when we were looking at one of the reports. So sometimes you'll get this little pop-up. It says the search results may have exceeded the max results of 500. The results may not be complete. Add more filter criteria to reduce the number of results or set the max results to a larger number. So there's those max results. Oftentimes you'll see that in the upper left corner. There's a few reports that I find I don't actually see the max results until I get this little error message, and then I have to go back to my setup and change this. So keep that in mind. If you're getting that, come back to the max results, change it. And really what it does is it allows you to have a chance to say, whoa, it's more than 500. This is going to take a long time. Maybe I want to adjust my scope of my report, or maybe I say, well, I really want all of those results. I'm going to let it run for the length of time that it needs it, but I'm going to add some max results in here so I get all the results. I'm not going to get everything. If this is showing up, I can't really rely on that I have all the results showing in my results. So it's saying if it exceeds, the results may not be complete. So you really can't trust it until you've adjusted things then. What else do I want to say on this? This slide shows the enhanced grid report. So again, the AKA the grid report setup screen. So again, it looks very similar to the other one. You notice you don't have the little arrows to the right here of the program filter. My preference, not everyone will want to do this, but my preference is usually to limit my data and my scope of my report up here. And I usually check all after that. I think sometimes I see people come through here and say, well, I just want, I'm running this for a child protection unit. I'm just going to choose CP and I'm not going to click all these other boxes. So the reason I don't do that is because I find people then forget that sometimes there might be a CP unit might also have workers who have transferred from other units and have other types of work groups, and I want to count those. I mean, if I want to count those, obviously, I want to include those. Also, workers in CP units might also have a child welfare program work group or an adoption guardianship work group. So depending on your agency and how you run, you might actually be filtering things out that you didn't intend to. So I usually prefer to check all, and then when I get into the report and I have all the data showing, I can use those filters. Remember, I can add that program column and filter out if I really don't want some of those other things, but at least then I know I have everything. So that's my preference. You can work with however works best for you. if you're wanting to look at all the assessment and case management work groups assigned to a particular unit, regardless of program type, perhaps you have a unit with varied workers with multiple programs, you can also click that check all button. Since this is a grid type report, just like I said, you can use that filter then within the grid to further filter or figure out how many do I have in this unit from different program areas. So it's really nice to get at that data. Enhanced grid report example output. So this is like what it looks like. Again, that's because currently I just left the default settings here, but I could certainly have dropped all of these columns. Remember, go to my column chooser here and add different columns. So you get to choose what you want. If you don't have a footer showing, remember, you can add those things. So add a footer, add a count, makes life a lot easier if you just have SSIS do that for you versus you trying to dig through and add counts to things manually. So we have some report examples. I am running real short on time. I want to make sure that we have time for questions too. So we already kind of looked at the case list report. I will just point out another really good grid report is the continuous placement report for getting at the numbers, getting numbers of children in continuous placements for the agency or by a program over a period of time. It's a great way to get at your placement data really quickly and easily, just adding those footers, filters, counts. That was one I used quite a bit when I pulled data for our agency. Workers specifically or supervisors using that placements without open out-of-home placement plans. That's a really nice way to really find what am I missing. If the report's indicating you're missing an out-of-home placement plan, but you have one in your work group, I would get that call all the time. Make sure that you're checking the setup of your out-of-home placement plan to ensure that the continuous placement and placement fields are correctly chosen. Sometimes what I found is people would copy an out-of-home placement plan and forget to update that information when a kid moved placements. And if you did that, then it's not going to be associated correctly and the report's going to show you don't have an out-of-home placement plan for that particular placement. And then another one, again, that's really handy for users or whomever's managing, ensuring that MAPCs and DOCs aren't missed, is that assessment due MAPC or DOC. So use that to help you know when reviews are coming due. I think it's also handy, like, hey, I'm going on vacation for 2 weeks this month. I'm going to make sure that I beforehand so I don't get behind when I get back. So, what do I have coming due? Or I'm going on leave, I can let my coworkers know here's things that are coming due and the timelines for things if I can't get to everything. So those are kind of handy to take a look at. So our panelists, is there any specific questions you want me to go through? I wanted to have a little more time and show a little bit more on the general reports. I can certainly do that for anybody who.
There is one question. Question, Marcia. Is there a report to determine if kids in placement have had a physical?
Ooh, let's look. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and I'm not recalling that, but that's not a question I get asked about. So let me jump into SSIS and see if we can look. So if there was, I'm assuming it would be under either the placement or the client data, but I'm not recalling it under client data. I'm going to take a quick scan here. Yeah, I don't see anything about that there. I don't remember that particular column. So let's look. Anything jumping out at you that you think might have it? And the other thing is I would come in here usually, like I would get those types of questions at my agency all the time. Once you get that, then you kind of have to dig around. Like I would pull up particular ones, like maybe it's in that. I don't think it is in the continuous placement one, but I would just pull that one up and go take a look at what are the column options. So don't just rely on what shows, right? What are the column options? Let's just pull that one up and we can use that as an example, but I don't see anything. I think it would be in one of these ones. I don't see anything particularly that automatically is pulling up. And maybe somebody out there who uses a lot of reports will know too. So feel free to send that in on the chat or the QA. But I'll pull this one up real quick and we'll just take a quick look. So, oops, no, actually we'll do it on all. We have more data. And I'm just gonna say, all right, let's see what shows up. Oops, lost my cursor. Hopefully I didn't go too fast. Sorry, there's a lot of information.
Somebody
Other thing to-
mentioned, Sonia mentioned
Yeah.
that they believe there is a report in Tableau.
That's a good point. And Tableau has additional things that you can't always find out here. So a really great place to look as well as Tableau. Excellent. Thank you, Sonia. Another thing to note that I didn't note, sometimes you come into reports, this is one particularly, personally, I don't love the look of when they have 2 lines of column headers. You can adjust that. So I didn't mention that earlier, but you can click and drag this to another location. So remember how I said you could do that? So I'm just going to do that. Or of course, I could just pull these off. I'm just going to pull them to the end here. I really hate it when there's 2, just because if I'm going to export the data, it doesn't make it easy to read in Excel unless it's all on one line. Keep that in mind if you're planning to export. It doesn't work great for groupings, I don't think. I think it works better this way. But here's where I would kind of look for what all there is in here. So like we have authority, pays and removal. I don't think it's going to be in here. I think it would be under client data since it would be client specific, but yeah, I don't see that. One thing I would use on this one, I believe, is where we would use primary removal reasons. Sometimes people are looking for that kind of information. That's kind of nice. You can pull that up, you can sort that, you can have a quick, easy report too on primary removal reason for kids, and then compare that over years. Kind of a nice data to have.
Another question, Marcia.
Yeah.
Is there a report that an agency can find out all the youth that are eligible for independent living services in their agency and have an eligibility screen open?
For independent living services and have an eligibility screen for what?
In our agency and have an eligibility screen open.
Marcia, I wonder if the Menighted folder in general reports would provide the information that Christine is looking for.
Yeah,
Can you run a report by IL
Yeah.
services under that?
Yeah, there's not much under Menighted. So they have just
okay.
forms. Yeah. I know, I was just trying to think, actually, I think there are some other reports now that you say that there's Menighted searches.
Yeah.
I think this is what she might be talking about. So I don't know if that would search by service, search by surveys. I'm not sure if that's what she's referring to. Didn't sound like it, but I might need a little bit more information on that one. But there are these options.
It said, Christine said she's thinking about when preparing their stay reports.
Yeah, I think these are the ones that she's talking about then. Because I was thinking eligibility makes me think of TCM stuff, which there are those. I used to run those as well, but these are the ones that you're going to want. And those are grid type reports as well, grid type information that comes up, I believe. So I'll just take a quick look at like one of these. I didn't prep this data ahead of time so that we'd have examples. So I can't tell you we're going to have data come up, but we'll take a quick look. So yeah, this is going to show you grid types. So you could look for, your federal reporting period. I don't know, active workers. I'm going to pull that one out of there. I don't know which one you might want on here. Let's just say any of these. Anybody who's got anything. I don't know if we have any right now that are in the data, but we'll run one. Oh, I could have just selected all in the first place, right? All right. Let's see what we got. We got one thing in here. Thankfully, Eric put something in. So there is one in here. Run it for your agency. Again, you're going to get a grid type report. You're going to see the federal data, federal reporting period in here. I think this is what you're looking for. There are a couple of additional options in here. And then, of course, you would be able to see, I believe you can click on each one. Each one will show up, underneath the survey search once you've searched. So you might have a whole list of them and you can click on them individually if you need further information as well. But again, this is a grid, so you have a bunch, you can use the sorting in here. Hopefully that helps a little bit.
And there's another question asking if you could show how to export to Excel again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and again, those instructions are out there on, I think it's on the grid options report. But I can show you, let's just do this one right here. So if I right click on any grid that I'm wanting to export the data from, and I choose export grid, and again, export raw grid is going to include everything. So even the columns I don't have chosen here. So export grid. And let's see if I can move this so you can see it. Oops. Are you seeing my save as box in here? Hopefully you guys are seeing it. You should see the save as box that I have up here. I'm
Yep,
going
we
to
see
choose.
it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Don't remember here, I said don't choose desktop. So choose like desktop. This is my desktop computer. So choose desktop here. I'm going to rename my grid report. I'm going to change the save as type to the type I want. So I always forget this the first time around, and then I have to do it again and save it. So I save it as Excel. So I'm going to change this save as type to Excel. And then I'm just going to save that. So we'll just say grid report and say delete. So I remember to delete this off my desktop. Mine wants to keep refreshing, I think, because I'm streaming here, but not going to let me save it anymore. Come on. We'll just save it like that. So, and I will show you what that looks like. Now, I think I'm going to need to get off of my second screen in order to find that. So, minimize this for a second. Of course, it moved it over. So you should see, like here it says grid report. There's that Excel. I just moved it over from my other screen where I save things. And I'll open it up, and there it is. So there's the information that we just saw within SSIS. Other questions? Oops.
I don't think so.
Yep.
Wow.
We're just a little over time, and that's okay. And I really appreciate you, Marcia, stepping up and doing this presentation. And maybe if there's some things that are lingering that you really wanted to touch on, I mean, I'm not volunteering you or anything, but maybe we can incorporate them in a future webinar.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions coming in about Horizon and how to upload it or how to get 5.5.3. And I think what our SSIS business operations team is going to do this week is send out a special communication. So I'd be happy to bring these questions that I'm seeing in the chat and the QA related to 5.5.3 and Horizon back to the team that's putting this project or implementing this project, so that they have the information available for all of you. Looks like there's some more things coming into the chat. Marcia, again, thank you so much. It was a great presentation, and I learned a lot of new things myself. So hopefully the attendees of this webinar can take this back to their place of work and practice. I will have the recording and related materials posted on our SSIS training page through the Minnesota Child Welfare Training Academy within the next couple of days, so you can share those with other workers at your agency. Lots of useful information, and we will be back again on April 19th at 9 a.m. again to host Bridging the Gap webinar for all of you, which kind of bridges, you know, the worker side with the physical side. And we've done this before and it's gotten a good response, so we're going to do it again. Everybody have a great rest of your day. And again, we'll see you back April 19th, and look out for that special communication regarding the server farm project. Have a great day, everybody.